Hey everybody. So natural selection is basically the most important concept to learn if you're studying evolution. To put it simply, natural selection is the survival of the fittest. So you often hear that phrase thrown around in everyday language. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But the theory of natural selection, its proper name is that it's the theory of evolution by natural selection. The theory of evolution by natural selection. So natural selection is the process that, or the main process, that causes evolution to happen. And we call it natural selection for short. Okay, so the two most important characters in developing the theory of natural selection were Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace. So here's Charles Darwin, probably the most famous biologist in history. You always see him in old age, but he was young once. So this is a photo of him when he was younger. And that's when he actually did most of his exploring around the world. He travelled on the Beagle, which was a British ship that explored various places around the world in the 1800s. So Charles Darwin, and then there's also Alfred Russel Wallace. And his work and his research was just as important as Darwin's. He just doesn't get the credit, basically, because Darwin is the one that published the famous book called On the Origin of a Species, and he's just got all the credit, which often happens in science. But Wallace and Darwin definitely did an equal amount of work, and they both actually came up with the idea of natural selection on their own at pretty much the same time. Okay, so natural selection is survival of the fittest. The only thing is, fittest doesn't just mean the strongest and the fastest, like it does if we're talking about fitness in everyday language. So fittest actually means how well adapted and how well suited you are to your environment that you're living in at the time. So the fittest organisms are the best suited to their environment at that time. Okay, so survival of the fittest, but not always the strongest and the fastest.